What is going on, you guys? It is your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and it is Philly the podcast. I got my boy, as always, Brandon here with me. What's going on?
Not too much, not too much.
Now, before we get into our guest that we have today, I want to remind everybody, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're going to have links to everything that my man does. Be sure to go check that out. Now, oh my God, I'm sorry. I just spaced out. So, sorry about that. Just give me 1 second. I'm sorry. My sister is calling me. Just give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. All right. I'm sorry about that. She doesn't usually call me, so I just want to make sure it wasn't important. But we got my man Cecil with me. How's it going today, sir? How you doing?
It is going great. It's always great talking football. It's Trevor Lawrence's pro day. We got a ton of stuff to talk about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So before we do talk, football or anything, let them know where you're coming from, what you do, where they can find you.
Yeah, 1043thefan.com or denverfan.com, a talk show host there Monday through Friday with Nick Ferguson, former Broncos safety. And then, of course, I write about fantasy football for footballguys.com and have been covering the draft in the NFL since 2003. I've been to the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Game and the Texas Nation Game and the Tropical Bowl and everything else since 2007. So it's a lot of fun, man, just getting out there and seeing what these players can do. Really, it's the player stories to me that are the most fascinating because every year we get a new crop.
Yeah, definitely. And this has been one of our more fun type of collaborations just because, this whole mock draft series, just because we learned so much about different teams and realize that, honestly, we're not too far off. So before we get into specific players or specifics that you want for the draft, how do you feel about Vic Fangio? How do you feel about this Denver season coming up and the one that just passed? What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, it's not good enough. I mean, the Broncos are supposed to be in the national conversation. The Broncos are one of the most well-respected and historic franchises in the league, and Super Bowl 50 wasn't that long ago, but it seems like forever and a day ago. So when I think of Vic Fangio, I think of great defensive mind, not a good head coach. And we've seen this before, usually with defensive guys that I'm going to bring up, but Dom Capers, Dick LeBeau, Hall of Fame Dick LeBeau. Terrible head coach. And there's no shame in that. He's a better head coach than I'll ever be. That's fine. But, are you running the entire show? Are you just focused solely on your defense? It seems like Fangio still favors that side. Of course, he's coached for 40 years. So, of course, he would favor that side. So, lots to, really kind of work on if you're the Denver Broncos. You are considered a sleeping giant by new GM George Paton. But how do you wake this team up? It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of effort. And in this division where you've got Pat Mahomes, where you've got Justin Herbert, the Raiders may make a move for, Deshaun Watson or whatever. You got a lot of work and now even more work just because of the teams you're most close to.
Right. And to keep it on the defensive side of everything, as you were just bringing up the defense, what are your thoughts on Von Miller? He's only getting older. Is it time to try to maybe trade him, kind of get some value for him? Or are you one of the fans that wants to see him retire as a Bronco and finish his whole career as a Bronco?
Right. And we'll stay with the on-field stuff because the off-field stuff with Vaughn is a little murky right now. And if you know the details, you're like, oh, yeah, let's just wait to see what comes of that. But with Vaughn on the field, missing all of last season, looked like in training camp, and it was limited access for all of us in training camp last year because of COVID. But I felt that Vaughn was going to have that bounce back season. Now, 2 years ago, people say, oh, he had a bad year, right? 8 sacks. Well, it's Von Miller. You think 8 sacks, that is a bad year, but he led the league in incompletions and interceptions caused by his pressure. So I look at that and I look at how many times he was double teamed 2 years ago. He was triple teamed 2 years ago. These are things that Bradley Chubb didn't get. And what do you have, 7 sacks this year? These are things that Malik Reed didn't get. Malik had 8 sacks, I believe, top of my head. So, okay, did Vaughn really have a bad year? Or is he just that good that teams still pay that much attention to him? There's a way to maybe rework his money. He wants to retire Bronco. So I'm not one of those guys that's wash him away, trade him, or release him or whatever. Although that seems to be a strong sentiment. And honestly, again, depending on the off-field stuff, I could see them moving on from Vaughn. I kind of hope they don't because I really wanted to see, and everybody's been waiting to see Chubb and Vaughn together again, what's that going to look like now?
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that, with the 8 sacks, especially because we're about to pay $18 million to a man with 8 sacks. So, and a man that has never, ever, I love Brandon Graham, that don't get me wrong here, but he's never been Von Miller. We'll put it that. There was a year or two that he was there with the pressures, because I do feel like people kind of don't look at that. People just get, enamored with the sack numbers, and, for good reason. It is what it is. It's the sexy stat. But, he was there with pressures, but no Von Miller is he. It is what it is. So from the defensive side, I want to kind of shift to the offensive side and kind of talk about your quarterback situation. Obviously, we have our, whatever you want to call it at this point. I've been looking up synonyms to try and find different ways of saying bad, but it's just bad. We're going through some rough times. So what do you think about your quarterback situation? You got Drew Lock over there. Do you think he can be that guy?
Not really. I mean, you want that guy to be a top 10 quarterback and not like fifth. You don't want to be in quarterback purgatory, right? Hey, we got Derek Carr, everybody. Okay, well, what do you really have? I want Kyler Murray. I want Russell Wilson. Everybody wants a Pat Mahomes, and hell, you want a Justin Herbert as well. So when I look at Drew Lock, I go, all the things that he had problems with at Mizzou are still there. I've talked to Drew Lock and his family and his trainers and everybody around him since the Senior Bowl. I remember talking to John Elway at the Senior Bowl about Drew Lock, and he told Drew, you're going to be a top 10 pick. The Broncos had the number 10 pick, and they moved back, and then they picked up Noah Fant, and they got Drew Lock in the second round because Elway couldn't help himself. But had the Broncos not taken him, would Lock have fallen to the end of the third round, to the fourth round? Because you look at the situation, you go, okay, how good is he really? He's been given the keys to the franchise, and he's not been playing consistently, turns the ball over way too much. Footwork is still an issue, and you can make every excuse under the book, but it's not the offensive line. The offensive line graded out very well, including left tackle Garrett Bowles. It's not the playmakers. We know he's got playmakers left and right. It's not the drops. Stop blaming Jerry Jeudy for the drops. Tom Brady had 45 drops from his receivers this year. Number one in the league. Number two was Pat Mahomes with 41. So, stop using that as an excuse. A lot of people want to apologize and say, oh, it just takes time, and he'll take that third-year leap like Josh Allen. Well, Josh Allen was an MVP candidate in year 3. I don't think Drew Lock's going to be there. So, he's got a lot to work on, and it's still the same things. For me personally, I'm sick and tired of talking about Drew Lock's footwork. I've talked to him. I've talked to his father. I've talked to his trainer. I've talked to Broncos coaches all about his footwork for 3 years. 3 years. And it's still an issue. And it's probably always going to be an issue. The way I put it to Broncos fans, he's like Jay Cutler, except he cares. So that's your quarterback. and by the way, speaking of Derek Carr earlier, I often said when he came out, I said, if he hits, he's Derek Carr. So what is that? Again, do you want that dude? That dude is a top 10 quarterback. Well, he's not going to be that. Even if he works out and the stars align and he does everything he's supposed to do, the best he'll ever be is Derek Carr. And that's not what I want.
All right. And to keep on the quarterback, Broncos have been low key, in this whole Carson Wentz drama. They've been brought up a couple of times. Would you be a fan of trading for Carson Wentz at this point? After you just spoke about footwork, and us Eagles fans, we know that's been part of his issue stemming back to when he was a rookie, and his mechanics have only gotten a little bit worse in a sense this past season. Is that someone that you would want to take a risk on?
Now, I had Carson Wentz graded as my number one quarterback that year. I had 4 quarterbacks graded in the first round: Carson, Jared Goff, Paxton Lynch, everybody, and then Dak Prescott. I had a late first round grade on Dak Prescott. And with Carson, it's a reclamation project now. I think he's been broken in a way that David Carr, not Derek Carr, but David Carr was broken by the Houston Texans years ago, where his career probably would have been different if they just protected him. And with Wentz, I'm not making excuses for the guy, but he's seeing ghosts out there. You watch the film and you just see he's feeling pressure when it's not there. He's abandoning the play. He seems to have a niche of teammates around him, just kind of behind the scenes stuff that I know in Philadelphia. Okay, if you're not in his clique, then maybe he's not targeting you as much. You guys can speak on that if you'd like. But with Wentz, I'd say no for the Broncos, even though they liked him back in the day. But no, because they're trying to get Locke going. And you probably move Locke, although he wouldn't beat out Jalen Hurts. But like if you get Carson Wentz, now it's a reclamation project. And oh, by the way, you have Pat Shurmur, one of the most boring offensive coordinators in the league. Like this guy's best on, and don't give me the Chip Kelly stuff, because everyone always brings up the Chip Kelly stuff. And I'm like, well, that was Chip Kelly. That wasn't him. Every year, even the great Minnesota Miracle, like with Case Keenum, for the love of God. And he always talks about his great memories of Sam Bradford. I'm like, dude, like actually do something. You're working with Pat Mahomes. You can chirp a little bit, right? I remember those Sam Bradford days, everybody. But Pat Shurmur's offense is regularly ranked in the 20s. Mm-hmm. And this is the offensive genius and guru. And this is the guy that's going to fix Carson Wentz. No, thanks. They need someone that can kind of ignore Pat Shurmur. And to me, that'd be a Deshaun Watson. They thought they had Stafford. They were very close. It's been reported otherwise, but that's bunk. That's from people just apologizing for Drew Lock. It was very close. They almost had Stafford. They thought they had Stafford. They will be players on Deshaun Watson. We'll see how that works out. But that's the saving grace. If you can get a guy that good, kind of ignore your offensive coordinator a little bit, that's the best plan for the Broncos.
So you don't want Wentz. So we got Ertz. We got. Let me go down the list. We have a whole shopping list of guys we're trying to get rid of right now. So you know, before I get too deep into this, I did want to ask you one last question. As you know, being in the media field, right? I want to know, like, because we're also going through obviously a coaching change. I want to know, when you're in those rooms, when you're talking to those players, is there ever? How do I say this? Let me put it this way: Can you sense any type of like discord when you're in that locker room talking to them? Can you feel that things are going wrong? Like, do you think like the media of the Eagles were kind of seeing this before maybe even the players were seeing it?
Yeah, for sure. Because you do feel those sorts of things. And it's something that when you're in the locker room, and the Broncos locker room is open 4 days a week when there wasn't a pandemic. And so I'd just go in there. I'd never have a recorder out, because you don't want to be that guy that's like, you know, in their face. Here, say something on the record. No recorder out. I have 110 pairs of Jordans, so I usually try to use those as a conversation starter. Go in and just talk to guys, and you definitely get a feel. I remember when Aqib Talib, John Elway had called the defense soft, and walk in the locker room, Aqib Talib says, tell Elway to stop drafting all those soft-ass QBs. And, like, you just felt that. I felt when the Broncos defense was pulling their own weight the year after the Super Bowl, when a lot of those guys were still there, and the Broncos offense was struggling with the Trevor Siemian, with the Paxton Lynch, and you felt that divide. The Broncos denied it. They hated when I brought it up on the air. But if you're there, you just notice, like, oh, defensive guys don't hang out with the offensive guys. Hey, they're not cool. Like, things aren't in a good situation. There's kind of a frustration that builds up with the players for good reason. This is a high pressure job. You know, they get paid a lot of money, but they're also under a lot of pressure, and they've got no stability because they can cut you at any time. So yeah, Eagles beat reporters, they were picking up on this long time ago. And well, it's something to always know who to listen to, and then know why someone is saying that, because I'm sure that you guys have like team-friendly media, because a lot of NFL media has become propaganda. And I'm speaking from a Broncos perspective. There's a lot of people that carry water for the team. They don't like talking about it, but that's what they do. So when they report something, you go, oh, that's what the team wants you to know. When someone else who isn't as team-friendly but is a good reporter, embedded, is around the team, when they say something, you go, oh, that's what the team doesn't want you to know, but that's what's going on. So know that, have that gauge, know who to listen to, and know why they're reporting what they're reporting. There's a lot of bunk, there's a lot of BS out there, but when you're able to sift through it as a fan or as a media member, you go, oh, I know why they're saying that.
That's a gem right there. So everybody listening, everybody listening, that was a gem right there. I like that. So yeah, let's get into the draft a little bit. I appreciate you, like I said, again, coming on here and just talking some football with us, man. So let's talk a little bit before we get into the picks, you know, or certain players. What do you think are some of the needs of, I mean, we talked of quarterbacks, we talked about, you know, Von Miller, but what are your thoughts on the needs of the Denver Broncos in this draft?
Yeah, they need cornerback. They just released AJ Bouye. Not a surprise. No dead money on his deal. He wasn't healthy, and he wasn't effective when he was out there. So, you've got Bryce Callahan. Guy's never played full 16 games in his career. He's not. Guess what? I've seen the future, guys. Bryce Callahan's going to get hurt this year. Sorry. Nicest guy ever. You want everyone to stay healthy forever and ever, but that's just the God's honest truth. So, okay, and Michael Jamudi is a second-year player that wasn't really good as a rookie. You've got serious concerns in the secondary. You've got a nice, strong corner class up at the top. There's some later round guys I could talk about if you want to. But that, I think, inside linebacker, you can never have too many pass rushers, especially with an aging Von Miller, if you keep him. So a lot of different directions to go. But mostly, if they do keep number 9, it's going to be a defensive player.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious to hear your thoughts on the cornerbacks, because I know as an Eagles fan, we have Darius Slay, and then that's it. Our corners, we were talking about this in multiple lives, and I've come to the realization that we're going to need some help, especially in the later rounds, depending on what we do at that 6th pick. But we definitely, at some point, need to draft a corner. So I would like to hear your thoughts on, like, who are your top corners coming into this draft?
Yeah, top corners. And again, I'm thinking of some of those later round guys that I saw down at the Senior Bowl this year. But top corners, Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley, we know that. Those are the two that will be around the top 10 and should be in that top 10 conversation. Those are the type of corners that can flip the field for you, right? Have that nose for the ball, kind of just turn things over. And if you're the Denver Broncos from that perspective, that's where you really need the help. They didn't get their hands on the ball enough. They didn't get enough interceptions, enough turnovers. You got like Farley, a guy like Surtain. Now all of a sudden you're doing that if you're this team. And then if you're Vic Fangio, he plays a lot of zone dog, not a lot of man. Okay, but you're not getting pressure because your pass rush isn't good enough. So that's exposing your zone. So if you got some guys with some more man skills, like because people are always looking at fit, and that's very important. It's the dirty secret in the NFL. Why is this player not working out? Well, it's fit. He doesn't fit what they do. All these guys are talented, and the talent line, the level between talent, because I could talk about Farley versus Surtain all day, but that line is very, very razor thin, no matter which side you come out on. And I happen to like Farley a little bit more, but still, like, it's so razor thin. It comes down to how are you going to use those prospects? If I'm Vic Fangio, and this is, he's an older gentleman, he's probably a little stubborn, probably not going to change his ways. But if you look at the last 2 years of the Denver Broncos, where defense has been as big of a problem as the offense, because the defense hasn't been good, you think, maybe I could change some things up this year. So maybe some corners with some more man qualities might fit for this team later on in the draft.
Okay, now I know everybody kind of goes into a draft and they have like a goal. They have like obviously, everybody has a goal with each pick. But overall, what do you think is the goal from this draft? Is it to be a competitive team next year? Is it to be building towards the future? Or what do you think the overall thought process from the franchise is with this draft?
It'll be towards building towards the future. They're so far down. I mean, their odds of winning the AFC West came out this week. They're 18-1. That's third worst in the league, behind only Cincinnati and Detroit, to win their division. The AFC West is incredibly tough. The Chargers, they're going to be there for a long time with Herbert. We all know about the Chiefs. The Raiders, if they do something at quarterback, maybe there's something more there. But you look at the Broncos, they're so far down, and they've drafted poorly for so many years that they don't have any depth. If you say, 22 versus 22, I can say, wow, the Broncos have a nice set of starters. Look at these starters. Don't look at the guys behind them, because they don't have those guys, right? And you need to harvest that talent. So then, oh man, we lost to Justin Simmons in free agency. Oh, we got that young guy on a come up. He's right here, like they did when Simmons stepped up in his own role, into that no-fly zone that used to be there with the Darian Stewart, with the TJ Ward, etc. You had a young guy in Justin Simmons. There was one pick that hit from the 2016 draft. Don't ask about the others, but like that's what you need, and that's what you don't have. So George Paton comes in, very well-respected man, so good because he turned down so many offers. He was so good. I wrote up 24 candidates that the Broncos could consider for GM. I did not include George Paton because I didn't think he'd choose Denver. I had a scouting buddy of mine in the NFC West text me and say, this is the equivalent of the Broncos getting Trevor Lawrence from a GM standpoint. So obviously very, very exciting. And you get a, move away from the Elway era, which was about, trying to make some splashes, couldn't find a quarterback, and then just didn't draft very well. Now you have a man that's very thorough. He's emotionally detached from this roster. He doesn't make those emotional decisions that Elway couldn't help himself with Drew Lock. Well, George Payton's not going to do that. He's going to make sound decisions. He's going to be incredibly thorough, hopefully expand the scouting staff as well. So I think it's all about building for the future with the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. And I don't mean to kind of go off topic for a second. It just popped into my head. I just kind of wanted to know your thoughts on Will Parks. He came to Philly. We didn't use him at all. Yeah, I don't know. It just popped in my head because he was talking depth. Then he talked Simmons. I'm like, oh, snap. Him and Will Parks are like close friends. So he came to Philly. We rarely used him. And then out of nowhere, we were like, all right, we don't need depth. Like you said, we'll let you go. And then he went back to the Broncos. Like, what are your thoughts on Will Parks? Did we just not use him?
Yeah, I love Philly Will, man. I love him. Like, absolutely one of the best dudes. One, hardworking, right? If we talk on the field stuff, right? He's so hardworking. He's so dedicated to his craft, but he is so much fun to be around. When he was a rookie and he was cleaning out his locker at the end of the year, it was the day after the season, whatever. He offered me like several pairs of shoes because we're shoe guys, right? But he wears like a size 9. I was like, get out of that kids section, man. Like, I need a size 12. So I love Philly Will. He's all emotion. He's all passion for the game. He's got such a great personality. And yeah, I mean, the Broncos figured out, wait a second, he can play slot corner. He can play free. He can play strong. He's made some big plays for the Broncos along the way. Hopefully they end up retaining him. But I thought he was so excited to go back home to Philly. I was like, man, what a great pick. What a great find for the Eagles. And then they didn't do anything with him. So it was good to have him back.
Yeah, let them know we're sorry. Let them know it wasn't us. Let them know things are messed up out here, man. We miss him. I love the guy, man. That was a good question. I forgot about that. Now, let's move a little bit to draft day, all right? This is a question I love to ask, and I'm going to ask it before Brandon does because he's killing it. But no, we all have what we want. We all have the draft crushes, the people that we want. What are some things or something that you do not want to see Denver do that would just get you very upset? It would be the total wrong decision.
Don't reach at quarterback. If you do take a QB at 9, and depending on who's there, don't reach because, again, it's about drafting and developing. Because and there is God-given talent of Pat Mahomes, right? You just throw him in and he's going to be great wherever. But if you get the right fit with Andy Reid, now he's a superstar from day one. So I look at what's holding this team back. I think it's a lot of Pat Shurmur. What's holding the offense back, honestly. I think it's Vic Fangio as head coach. If Vic said, I'm just a defensive coordinator and hire somebody else as head coach, it'd be awesome, but he's never going to do that. There's also an ownership thing at the top. So within the next year, we'll probably see the Broncos sold. Excuse me. And then we'll probably see a coaching change. So because of that, for this year, I think it's about building those players, building that defense so that the next head coach and the next offensive coordinator and the next owner has something better to work with. So for me, just, for years, this team's done it. They move up to 26. They take Paxton Lynch. The Chiefs liked him. And the Cowboys, Jerry Jones wanted him. They should have stayed put at 31. Dak Prescott should have been their quarterback, but Dak missed a private flight to Denver. Actually, it was a public flight, but he missed his flight at the airport for his private workout for the Broncos before the draft. That's why they didn't draft him. They loved him at the Senior Bowl. He was perfect for Gary Kubiak. Wow. And speaking of which, Gary Kubiak didn't want Paxton Lynch at all. Not at all. He hated the kid. And the kid wasn't real dedicated. I can tell you more off the air, but he wasn't real dedicated to the game. I think it's not a surprise for people when I say that. So there's one thing I don't want this team to do. Don't reach just so you can take a QB and say, look, guys, we're fixing it. You're not fixing it if Shurmur's still there, if Fangio's still there. It's about draft and develop. You can't just draft. Well, we picked them. What are they doing? No, you have to draft and develop. In order to develop, you have to have people there that you can trust to develop. And I don't think they do.
Sure. I used to live in Morrison, Colorado for 6 months. So I know it goes from literally 75 degrees and sunny to hailing within 5 minutes.
It's 6 degrees today. Yesterday it was 60.
What? Yeah, it is.
That
crazy.
is crazy.
It is beautiful, though. It is beautiful.
Morrison's awesome. It's just around the corner from me, honestly. Not that far away.
Yeah, I used to be a chef, so I cooked for a family out there. It was one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived. Nice. I don't know why I thought of that. You said airport, and I just thought of Denver Airport. But now I'm kind of upset with you guys because it's like we could have definitely used Dak Prescott out of our division. I mean, the man is the man is a great player. So that's crazy. That's a crazy story. I never knew that. So let's get into it. Let's talk the actual pick we're at number 9 now, right?
Number 9.
Oh God, it's going quick. It's going pretty quick. So we're at number 9. What do you have your Denver Broncos picking?
Well, I see in your mock draft that 4 quarterbacks have been taken. So the reason I say don't reach for a quarterback, because the next quarterback's Mac Jones. Now, I was down at the Senior Bowl. I happen to have a late first-round grade on Mac Jones. Taking him at 9 is a stretch, whatever. But again, it's about fit. And I think of Pat Shurmur, and I go, well, he's a 3-vert guy. He wants to go 3 wide receivers and stretch the field all day. And that's not Mac Jones's game. I think he can throw deep. I've said that on Twitter and on my show. Like, if you think Mac Jones can't throw deep, you're not paying attention. But the best part of his game, put him in a Saints offense. Put him in a Patriots offense where he can work the intermediate, the short stuff, dink and dunk, and then bam, take a shot. Like, that's where Mac Jones can be really special. And he's kind of an old school pocket passer. Those are becoming antiques. That's not the way the NFL is going. In the NFL, you want a Kyler Murray, you want a Josh Allen, you want a quarterback that can be mobile and run and make plays with his legs. You want a Jalen Hurts. Like, that's what you want. That's where the NFL is trending. So I would say at 9, with those 4 quarterbacks gone, and yeah, I would consider Lance if he was there. He's not there in this mock draft. So for me, don't reach, don't make it Mac Jones. Go to the defensive side of the ball. And you guys had Surtain going, so I could easily say Farley. That would fit for me and what I like. But I'm going to throw a little bit of a change up because of the Super Bowl. I have Super Bowl bias. I have Devin White bias because I have a man crush on Devin White. I always have since his days at LSU. So I'm going to go Micah Parsons here.
Wow.
Yeah. State. Now, you need a playmaker at that linebacker position, and we've seen that. I talked to Wade Phillips a couple of days ago. Like, we're just going on and on about this type of playmaker at that position. You know, you need that difference maker. The Broncos have Alexander Johnson. He's not good. And Josie Jewell, who's a try-hard guy that needs to play just special teams. Like, again, when you can have that playmaker and effectively rob the middle of the field, rush the passer, do all these sorts of things like Devin White has done for the Buccaneers, I think that's what Parsons can be. We know athletically how gifted he is. It's absolutely off the charts. So you bring in a guy like that, and he's a chess piece, basically, that you can do a lot of things with. Hey, Vic Fangio, you want your defense to be just like it was? Well, look at some of the guys, if we go back through Fangio's career, and he's working with like Patrick Willis, right? Back in the day when he was with the Saints, it was Sam Mills and Vaughn Johnson at inside linebacker. With the Bears, he had guys like Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith. Right. Pretty good group of linebackers. Yeah. Alexander Johnson, Josie Jewell aren't those guys. Micah Parsons very well could be.
Whew, you know, I'm happy, Brad. You know, I'm a big Penn State guy, so I've been trying to get Micah Parsons out of this top 10. We couldn't pick him for the Eagles because I had to be unbiased. Whatever. But I'm very happy. I'm very happy to see him go to Denver. Honestly, I mean, you guys have obviously there's a lot of changes, but you guys have a history of good defense, and I definitely think he could thrive out there. He might have to get used to the air a little bit, but I think he would do very well. What do you think, Brandon?
I mean, it's exciting. If you guys could land a guy like Micah Parsons, I mean, low key, if he turns out to be like the next best thing, we'll be jealous as the Eagles fans because we could have kept the kid home in Pennsylvania. But
right.
I mean, like you said, having a guy like Devin White, that kind of linebacker nowadays, you need to have speed, you need to be able to cover, and you need to be able to get ready and like pop some people. And those kind of athletic linebackers are a must. As an Eagles fan, we're hungry for a crazy linebacker like that. Unfortunately, in our mock draft, we didn't grab one, but who knows? But Michael Parsons is a great pick.
Yeah, I'll get Chaz Surratt in the second round. Like, that kid was making plays down at the Senior Bowl. So you've got some options. And people talk about the misses for the Broncos at quarterback. Look at the misses that they've had on inside linebacker, guys they didn't draft. I had a mocked Levante David years ago, and they moved out and they took Derek Wolfe. And then the pick before Levante David, they took Brock Osweiler. For the love of God. And they liked 3 quarterbacks that year. They liked Foles, they liked Osweiler, and they liked some guy named Russell Wilson. You know, probably should have went with the short guy from Wisconsin. But I'm just, and then I look at Devin Bush was there for them at 10. They move out, and Noah Fant's been fine. I really like Noah Fant. This isn't about him, but they moved out of the pick that became Devin Bush in that Devin White draft. They didn't have any shot at Devin White unless they moved up. But like you had Devin Bush right there, and you said no. That inside linebacker spot has been a problem since Al Wilson was forced to retire, and that's before 15 years ago, whatever the number is. Like that's been a long time since this team has had that dude at that position.
Yeah. Now, one last thing I do want to ask you before I get you out of here. I know you've been going all day, just coming off your show as well. But, what I know, you kind of just said no, maybe, but what are your thoughts about them dropping back in the draft, maybe trading back a little bit? Would you be open to that, or do you think you take the player?
I think it's the smartest thing to do. Now, the way this mock draft is based, like I don't know if Mac Jones would get people fired up enough to do just that. If you look at Wilson, because people have like Wilson, Fields, and Lance, all that, like, oh, okay, one of those three guys, because we could debate all day about, who could actually fall to 9. But one of those three guys is there at 9, then sure. I think the phone's ringing, and it's wise. Again, this team doesn't have any depth. So it's about collecting guys that can start, but also about getting that depth. And if you can move back, 10 spots, collect some more picks, I think that's what the Broncos need to do because of the position that they're in.
All right. So the Denver Broncos have made their decision, and I love it. I love the decision. Go Micah. Hey, and I'm like I said before, I am not an I told you so type of guy, but I do have Photoshop, and my Photoshop is an I told you so type of Photoshop. So when Micah Parsons is going crazy wherever he may land, I will be telling you guys. But listen, man, I appreciate you so much for coming on the show and just talking some Denver Broncos with us. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me on the show.
Definitely. And we'll do this again sometime. Maybe we'll come back to the pick after the draft and see how we did. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I always love that, man. Like, that's why I only do one mock draft. I do one mock draft every year. I used to do a bunch, and people love him. First off, they read every single mock draft. But then 2, they get like confused by it because it's like, okay, I'm doing an exercise of what if this happens? Like, what if this happens? How does that change that? And they're like, you were so wrong about that pick. I'm like, well, that wasn't that exercise. So now I do one mock where I go, this is how it's going to be. And last year I got 10 in the first round, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a pretty good.
There's so many players out there. I mean, you took 10 right. That's legit.
I'll take that.
I think the best one I had was the Isaiah Wilson one at the end of the first round. I was like, because I knew Tennessee liked him. I was like, okay, throw him in there end of the first round.
Well, when you make your final mock draft for the season, you let me know because I need to know who my Eagles are going to pick. Okay. That's what I'm waiting for.
Okay.
But shout out to everybody that's in the chat, man. I appreciate you guys kicking it with us. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and other than that, y'all know what it is, man. It is Fly Eagles Fly, and we are out here. Peace.